Welcome to our channel, your gateway to the most spine-chilling tales and unnerving true stories. Today, we present a true story, most haunted place in UK, Pluckley Village. The village of Pluckley lay nestled in the Kent countryside, a tapestry of thatched cottages and winding lanes. It was an idyllic setting, seemingly untouched by time. The morning mist clung to the fields like a shroud, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and ancient wood. It was here that Professor Emily Harper, a historian with a penchant for the paranormal, arrived on a crisp October morning. Emily had heard of Pluckley's dark reputation, its record of hauntings, and the numerous ghostly apparitions reported over the years. Her interest was piqued by tales of the Watercress Woman, the spectral figure seen at Pinnock Bridge, and the chilling encounter in the Church of St. Nicholas. She had come to Pluckley to document these stories, hoping to uncover the truth behind the legends. She checked into a quaint bed and breakfast, its wooden beams and creaky floors exuding a rustic charm. Mrs. Harris, the elderly innkeeper, greeted her with a warm smile that barely masked the weariness in her eyes. "Welcome to Pluckley, dear. I hope you'll find your stay enlightening," Mrs. Harris said, her voice trailing off as if she feared saying too much. Emily smiled politely. "I'm looking forward to exploring the village. I've heard so many fascinating stories." Mrs. Harris nodded, her expression somber. Stories indeed. Just remember, some stones are best left unturned." Emily thanked her and took the key to her room, a cozy space overlooking the village green. She unpacked her bags, her heart quickening with excitement. This was the beginning of an adventure, one that would take her deep into the heart of Pluckley's mysteries. Emily's first stop was Pinnock Bridge, the site of the Watercress Woman's tragic death. The bridge was a simple stone structure spanning a narrow stream, its weathered surface bearing the marks of centuries. As she approached, she felt a chill in the air, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She stood on the bridge, gazing into the water below. The stream babbled softly, its surface reflecting the overcast sky. Emily's mind wandered to the stories she had read: the old woman gathering watercress, the accidental fire, the spectral pink glow. She set up her camera and began to film, narrating her thoughts. As you can see, Pinnock Bridge is a quiet, unassuming place. Yet, it is here that the Watercress Woman is said to appear, her ghostly form a reminder of a life cut short. Local legend speaks of a pink glow, a sign of her presence. The air grew colder, and Emily shivered. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck and continued filming. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound behind her, like the whisper of fabric against stone. She turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Just the wind, she told herself, though her heart raced. As dusk fell, Emily packed up her equipment and headed back to the inn. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, but she dismissed it as nerves. After all, she was in one of the most haunted villages in Britain. Her mind was bound to play tricks on her. The next morning, Emily visited the Church of St. Nicholas. The ancient building stood at the heart of the village, its stone walls weathered by time. She was greeted by Reverend Thomas Caldwell, a kindly man with a gentle demeanor. "Welcome to St. Nicholas, Professor Harper," he said, shaking her hand. "I understand you're here to research our village's history." "Yes, Reverend," Emily replied. "I'm particularly interested in the paranormal aspects. I've heard some fascinating stories about this church." Reverend Caldwell nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Indeed, Pluckley is rich in history and legend, but I must warn you, not all of our stories have happy endings." They walked through the church, the Reverend pointing out various historical features. The air was cool and still, the silence only broken by their footsteps, echoing off the stone floor. Emily felt a sense of awe mixed with a tinge of unease. In the 1970s, Reverend Caldwell began. A group of paranormal investigators spent the night here. They hoped to capture evidence of the spirits said to haunt this place. They reported an uneventful night, save for the visits from what they believed to be my predecessor's dog. Emily frowned. "But there was no dog, correct?" The Reverend smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Correct. My predecessor did not own a dog. What they saw remains a mystery." Emily's mind buzzed with questions. "Do you believe the church is haunted, Reverend?" He paused, his gaze distant. "I believe there are things in this world, beyond our understanding. Whether they are spirits or echoes of the past, I cannot say. But I have felt presences here, as have many others." As they continued their tour, Emily felt a growing sense of anticipation. She knew she was on the verge of something significant, something that could shed light on Pluckley's haunted past. That night, Emily decided to return to Pinnock Bridge. She felt drawn to the site, compelled to seek out the Watercress Woman. Armed with her camera and a voice recorder, she set out under the cover of darkness. The village was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of her footsteps on the gravel path. As she approached the bridge, the air grew colder, and a thick fog began to roll in. Emily's breath came in visible puffs, and she felt a sense of foreboding. She set up her equipment and began recording. "It's a little after midnight, and I'm standing on Pinnock Bridge. The atmosphere is decidedly eerie. The fog is thick, and the temperature has dropped significantly." She paused, listening. The night was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Emily closed her eyes, focusing on the sounds around her. Suddenly, she heard it. The faint sound of a woman sobbing. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned towards the source of the sound. There, in the middle of the bridge, she saw a figure. The apparition was faint, a shimmering outline of an elderly woman sitting with a basket beside her. The woman appeared to be weeping, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Emily's hands trembled as she lifted her camera, capturing the ghostly image. "I see her," she whispered. "It's the Watercress Woman." As she watched, the figure slowly faded, leaving only the lingering sound of sobbing. Emily stood there, her mind racing. She had seen a ghost, a real ghost. This was the proof she had been seeking. She packed up her equipment and hurried back to the inn, her heart still pounding. She couldn't wait to review the footage, to see if she had truly captured the spirit on film. Back in her room, Emily connected her camera to her laptop and reviewed the footage. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw the shimmering figure on the screen. The Watercress Woman was real, her ghostly form captured in vivid detail. She played the audio recording, her hands shaking. The sobbing was clear, a mournful sound that sent chills down her spine. Emily knew she had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The next day, she visited the local archives, hoping to learn more about the Watercress Woman. The archivist, an elderly man named Mr. Simmons, greeted her warmly. "Ah, Professor Harper, I hear you've been exploring our village's haunted history." "Yes, Mr. Simmons," Emily replied. "I'm particularly interested in the story of the Watercress Woman. I had an encounter at Pinnock Bridge last night." Mr. Simmons raised an eyebrow. "Did you now? Well, her story is a tragic one. Her name was Sarah Blackwood, a widow who made a living by gathering and selling watercress. One evening, after drinking heavily, she fell asleep by the river. Her pipe dropped onto her clothes, and she was consumed by flames." Emily listened intently, her heart aching for the poor woman. "Do you know if she had any family?" Mr. Simmons nodded. "She had a daughter, Elizabeth. She moved away after her mother's death, unable to bear the memories. No one knows what became of her." Emily thanked him and left the archives, her mind buzzing with thoughts. She felt a deep connection to Sarah Blackwood, a need to tell her story and give her peace. Emily spent the next few days researching Elizabeth Blackwood. She combed through old records and newspapers, hoping to find any trace of Sarah's daughter. Her efforts paid off when she discovered an old letter in the archives. The letter was from Elizabeth to a friend, dated a few years after her mother's death. In it, Elizabeth spoke of her grief and her decision to move to London to start anew. She mentioned working as a seamstress and finding solace in her faith. Emily felt a glimmer of hope. If she could find Elizabeth's descendants, perhaps she could bring closure to Sarah's restless spirit. She decided to visit London, armed with the information she had gathered. In London, Emily visited several old churches and cemeteries, following the clues in Elizabeth's letter. After days of searching, she finally found a record of Elizabeth's marriage and the birth of her children. It led her to a small, well-kept graveyard on the outskirts of the city. There, she found Elizabeth's grave, marked with a simple headstone. Next to it was a grave marked Sarah Blackwood, Elizabeth's mother. Emily felt a sense of peace as she stood before the graves, as if she had finally brought the two women together. Returning to Pluckley, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to spend a night in the Church of St. Nicholas, hoping to experience the hauntings firsthand. Reverend Caldwell granted her permission, and she prepared for a night of vigil. The church was dark and silent as Emily set up her equipment. She lit a few candles, their flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. She sat in one of the pews, her camera and recorder ready. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of the old building. Emily fought to stay awake, her eyes heavy with fatigue. Just as she was about to drift off, she heard it, the soft patter of footsteps. Her heart raced as she scanned the dimly lit church. The footsteps grew louder, approaching from the back of the church. Emily held her breath, her eyes fixed on the dark aisle. A figure emerged from the shadows, a dog trotting beside it. The figure was faint, like a mist, but Emily could make out the form of a man in clerical robes. The dog, a large, shaggy creature, padded silently alongside him. Emily's hand shook as she lifted her camera, capturing the ghostly pair. The figure and the dog walked slowly down the aisle, their forms shimmering in the candlelight. As they reached the altar, they turned and disappeared into the darkness. Emily sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling. She had seen the ghost of the vicar and his spectral dog. This was another piece of the puzzle, another confirmation of Pluckley's haunted reputation. Emily spent the next few days compiling her findings, her excitement growing with each new piece of evidence. She felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing she was uncovering the truth behind Pluckley's ghostly legends. But there was one final encounter that awaited her, one that would test her resolve and courage. On her last night in Pluckley, Emily decided to visit the Screaming Woods, a dense forest on the outskirts of the village. The woods were notorious for the sounds of eerie screams that echoed through the trees at night. Many villagers avoided the place, fearing the spirits that were said to haunt it. Emily ventured into the woods, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The trees loomed overhead, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As she walked deeper into the forest, she heard it, a distant scream, high-pitched and filled with terror. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she pressed on, determined to uncover the source of the sound. The screams grew louder, more frequent, filling the night with a sense of dread. Emily felt a cold sweat break out on her skin, her hands trembling as she clutched her flashlight. She reached a clearing, the ground covered in a thick layer of leaves. There, in the center of the clearing, she saw them, a group of ghostly figures, their faces twisted in anguish. They writhed and moaned, their spectral forms glowing faintly in the darkness. Emily watched in horror as the figures seemed to relive their final moments, their screams piercing the night. She lifted her camera, capturing the haunting scene. The figures flickered and faded, their screams echoing through the trees. Emily felt a sense of profound sadness, knowing these spirits were trapped in their torment. As she turned to leave, she felt a presence behind her. She spun around, her flashlight revealing the figure of a woman. The woman's face was gaunt, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Emily recognized her as Sarah Blackwood. Sarah reached out, her ghostly hand passing through Emily's arm. "Help us," she whispered, her voice a faint echo. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will," she promised. "I'll tell your story." With that, Sarah's figure dissolved into the mist, leaving Emily standing alone in the clearing. She felt a sense of determination, knowing she had a mission to complete. Returning to the inn, Emily spent the next few days compiling her findings into a comprehensive report. She included her footage of the Watercress Woman, the ghostly vicar, and the tormented spirits in the Screaming Woods. Her report was detailed and thorough, a testament to the haunted history of Pluckley. She presented her findings to the local historical society, who were both fascinated and horrified by her discoveries. They agreed to create a memorial for Sarah Blackwood and the other spirits, a place where their stories could be told and remembered. Emily felt a sense of accomplishment as she left Pluckley. She had uncovered the truth behind the village's hauntings and brought peace to the restless spirits. Her journey had been filled with terror and sorrow, but it had also been a profound and moving experience. Months later, Emily published her findings in a book titled Whispers of Pluckley, The Haunted History of England's Most Haunted Village. The book became a bestseller, captivating readers with its vivid descriptions and chilling encounters. Pluckley became a destination for paranormal enthusiasts, drawn by the village's haunted reputation and Emily's compelling narrative. The memorial for Sarah Blackwood and the other spirits stood as a reminder of the village's tragic past and the enduring presence of its ghosts. Emily continued her work as a historian and paranormal investigator, her experiences in Pluckley shaping her career. She never forgot the village and the spirits she had encountered, their stories forever etched in her mind. And as she traveled to other haunted locations, she carried with her the knowledge that some stones, once unturned, could reveal the most extraordinary and terrifying truths. A year had passed since Emily's groundbreaking visit to Pluckley. Her book had not only garnered acclaim, but had also sparked a renewed interest in the village's haunted history. Paranormal investigators, historians, and tourists flocked to Pluckley, eager to experience its ghostly tales firsthand. One evening, as Emily sat in her study reviewing letters from readers, a particular envelope caught her eye. It was from an elderly woman named Margaret Taylor, who claimed to be a distant relative of Sarah Blackwood. Intrigued, Emily opened the letter and began to read. "Dear Professor Harper, I was deeply moved by your book, and I believe I have information that may interest you. My grandmother often spoke of Sarah Blackwood and her tragic end. She mentioned a family secret that could explain the restless spirits in Pluckley. If you would like to learn more, please visit me at my home in Canterbury. Sincerely, Margaret Taylor." Emily's curiosity was piqued. Could there be more to Sarah's story? The next day, she drove to Canterbury, eager to uncover this new piece of the puzzle. Margaret's home was a charming cottage on the outskirts of the city. The elderly woman greeted Emily warmly, her eyes bright with excitement. "Professor Harper, thank you for coming. Please, sit down," Margaret said, leading her to a cozy sitting room. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Taylor. Your letter mentioned a family secret." Margaret nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, my grandmother, Elizabeth, was Sarah Blackwood's daughter. She often spoke of her mother's tragic death and the hauntings that followed. But she also mentioned something that wasn't in the official records." Emily leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What did she say?" Margaret took a deep breath. Before her death, Sarah was involved in a dispute with a local landowner, Sir William Fenton. He was a cruel man, known for his ruthless business practices. Sarah had discovered evidence of his illegal activities and threatened to expose him. Sir William swore revenge. Emily's mind raced. "Are you saying that Sarah's death wasn't an accident?" Margaret nodded. "That's what my grandmother believed. She always suspected that Sir William was responsible for her mother's death, that he arranged for the fire to cover up his crimes. The hauntings began shortly after his death, as if Sarah and the others were seeking justice." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This revelation added a new layer to Pluckley's haunted history. If Sarah's spirit was seeking justice, it explained the intensity of her presence. "Thank you for sharing this with me, Mrs. Taylor. It's an important piece of the puzzle," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. Margaret smiled sadly. "I hope it helps. Sarah deserves to rest in peace." Armed with this new information, Emily returned to Pluckley. She sought out Reverend Caldwell, hoping to learn more about Sir William Fenton and his connection to the village's hauntings. "Professor Harper, it's good to see you again," Reverend Caldwell said, welcoming her into his office. "Reverend, I've discovered something significant," Emily began, recounting her conversation with Margaret Taylor. "Do you know anything about Sir William Fenton?" The Reverend's expression darkened. "Ah, Sir William. He was a notorious figure in Pluckley's history. Ruthless and unscrupulous, he made many enemies. It's not surprising that Sarah Blackwood would have crossed paths with him. Emily nodded. I believe he was responsible for Sarah's death, and that her spirit is seeking justice. Do you have any records that might support this theory? Reverend Caldwell led Emily to the church archives, a collection of dusty old books and documents. They spent hours poring over the records, searching for any mention of Sir William and his dealings. Finally, they found it. A letter from Sir William to a local magistrate, threatening retribution against Sarah Blackwood. The letter was dated just days before her death. This is it, Emily said, her heart racing. Proof that Sir William had a motive to harm Sarah. Reverend Caldwell nodded. It seems your theory is correct. Sarah's spirit, and perhaps the others, are seeking justice for the wrongs done to them. With this new evidence, Emily decided to hold a memorial service in the Church of St. Nicholas, dedicated to Sarah Blackwood and the other restless spirits. She invited the villagers, hoping to bring closure to the haunted history of Pluckley. The church was filled with villagers, their faces a mix of curiosity and solemnity. Emily stood at the front, her heart pounding with anticipation. Reverend Caldwell began the service, his voice echoing through the ancient building. We gather here today to honor the memory of Sarah Blackwood and all those who have suffered in silence. Their spirits have lingered, seeking justice for the wrongs done to them. Today, we acknowledge their pain and offer our respect and remembrance. Emily stepped forward, holding the letter from Sir William. This letter is evidence of the injustices faced by Sarah Blackwood. Her death was not an accident, but a crime committed to silence her. We are here to ensure her voice is heard and her story is told. The villagers listened in hushed silence as Emily recounted Sarah's story and the haunting encounters that had plagued Pluckley. She spoke of the Watercress Woman, the ghostly vicar, and the tormented spirits in the screaming woods. As the service concluded, Reverend Caldwell led a prayer for peace and closure. The villagers lit candles, placing them at the altar in memory of the lost souls. Emily felt a sense of calm settle over the church, as if the spirits were finally at rest. In the days that followed, Pluckley seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The atmosphere in the village lightened, and the haunting encounters grew less frequent. Emily felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing she had played a part in bringing peace to the restless spirits. She returned to London, her heart full of new stories and experiences. Her journey to Pluckley had been one of discovery and revelation, a testament to the enduring power of history and the human spirit. As she continued her work, Emily carried with her the lessons she had learned in Pluckley. She knew that some stones, once unturned, could reveal not only the darkest secrets, but also the path to redemption and peace. Years later, Emily Harper became a renowned historian and paranormal investigator, her work inspiring others to explore the mysteries of the past. Her book, Whispers of Pluckley, remained a classic, a reminder of the haunted history of a small village in Kent. And in Pluckley, the spirits of Sarah Blackwood and the others found peace, their stories remembered and honored by the villagers. The memorial in the Church of St. Nicholas stood as a testament to their lives and the justice they had finally received. The village, once known as the most haunted in Britain, became a place of reflection and remembrance. And as the years passed, the whispers of Pluckley continued to echo, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is light and redemption. Thank you so much for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform. Until next time, happy movie watching.